The blood had already soaked through her dress and into the dry California earth by the time she heard the hoofbeats, though she could no longer tell if they were real or just another fevered dream pulling her toward the darkness. Maeve Zimmerman lay crumpled at the bottom of a rocky ravine 3 miles outside Ukiah, her fingers still clutching at the sparse desert grass as if holding on to life itself. Her brothers had done this. Her own flesh and blood had beaten her until her ribs screamed, and her face swelled beyond recognition, all because she had dared to refuse the marriage they had arranged to a cruel cattle baron twice her age. They had dragged her out here in the dead of night, taken turns landing their brutal blows, and left her for the buzzards without a second glance. The August sun of 1878 beat down mercilessly on the Northern California landscape, turning the air thick and heavy. Maeve tried to move, to drag herself toward some kind of shelter, but her body refused to cooperate. Pain radiated through every inch of her 21-year-old frame. She could taste copper in her mouth, could feel the sticky wetness of blood matting her dark hair. Her brothers Marcus and Daniel had always been violent men, shaped by their father's cruelty before he died, but she had never imagined they would go this far. The argument had started over dinner, escalated into shouting, and then their hands had become fists. When she tried to run, they had chased her down like an animal. The hoofbeats grew louder, and Maeve forced her eyes open just enough to see a figure on horseback, silhouetted against the harsh blue sky. She tried to call out, but her throat was too dry, her voice nothing more than a broken rasp. The rider would pass by. He would never see her down here in this ravine. She would die here alone, and her brothers would tell everyone in town that she had run off in the night, ungrateful and wild. But the hoofbeats stopped. Cade Emerson had been tracking a stray calf when he noticed the disturbed earth near the ravine's edge. At 25, he had spent half his life reading signs in the wilderness, and something about the scuff marks and broken vegetation made his instincts flare. He dismounted from his buckskin gelding and approached carefully, his hand instinctively moving to the revolver at his hip. What he found made his blood run cold. A woman lay crumpled among the rocks, her calico dress torn and stained dark with blood. Her face was so swollen and bruised that he could barely make out her features. For a terrible moment, he thought she was already dead, but then he saw the slight rise and fall of her chest, the flutter of her eyelids. "Jesus Christ," he breathed, scrambling down the rocky slope with no thought for his own safety. He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering uncertainly. He had seen men beaten within an inch of their lives in saloon brawls, had witnessed the aftermath of Apache raids and outlaw violence, but something about seeing a woman in this condition made his stomach turn. "Madam, can you hear me?" Maeve's eyes opened, just barely. Through the fog of pain, she saw a young man with sun-bronzed skin and concerned brown eyes studying her face. He had dark blonde hair that curled slightly at his collar, and there was genuine horror in his expression. She tried to speak, to warn him that her brothers might come back, but only a small sound escaped her lips. "Don't try to talk," Cade said gently. He shrugged out of his worn denim jacket and carefully placed it over her. "I am going to get you out of here. This is going to hurt, but I need to move you or you are going to die out here. Do you understand?" She managed the smallest of nods. Cade worked with practiced efficiency, drawing on everything he had learned growing up on his family's ranch. He checked her injuries as best he could without moving her too much. Broken ribs for certain, maybe internal bleeding, definitely a concussion. Her left arm was bent at an odd angle. The swelling on her face was already turning purple and black. Whoever had done this had meant to kill her. He retrieved his canteen and carefully dripped water onto her cracked lips. She swallowed reflexively, and he felt a small surge of relief. If she could swallow, her throat was not too damaged. He tore strips from his shirt to fashion makeshift bandages for the worst of the bleeding wounds, moving as gently as possible even as he worked quickly. Every minute she stayed out here in the August heat decreased her chances of survival. "I am going to lift you now," he said quietly. "I will try to be gentle, but it is going to hurt something fierce. I am sorry." When he slid his arms beneath her and lifted, Maeve's world exploded into white-hot agony. She tried to stifle the scream but failed, and then merciful darkness swept over her. Cade felt her go limp in his arms and was momentarily grateful that she was unconscious. He carried her up the ravine slope, placing each foot with deliberate care on the loose rock. His horse, Cricket, stood waiting patiently, trained well enough not to spook at the smell of blood. Getting her onto the horse while unconscious proved challenging, but Cade managed it through sheer determination. He mounted behind her, settling her carefully against his chest so he could hold her steady with one arm while guiding Cricket with the other. His ranch was closer than town, and he had basic medical supplies there. More importantly, his sister Grace had worked as a nurse in San Francisco before returning home last year. If anyone could help this woman, Grace could. The ride back felt endless. Maeve drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally moaning in pain when Cricket's gait jostled her injuries. Each sound she made tightened something in Cade's chest. He found himself talking to her, keeping up a steady stream of quiet words even though he did not know if she could hear him. "You are going to be all right," he murmured. "My sister Grace is real good with healing. She has got all kinds of medicines and knowledge. We will get you fixed up and you will be safe at our ranch. Nobody is going to hurt you again, I promise you that." He meant every word, though he barely knew this woman. Something about finding her broken and bleeding had ignited a fierce protectiveness in him that he could not quite explain. He had always been the type to help those in need, but this felt different, more personal somehow. The Emerson ranch came into view just as the sun reached its zenith. It was a modest spread, nothing fancy, but well-maintained with sturdy fences and a solid two-story house that Cade's father had built 30 years ago. Grace was hanging laundry in the yard when she saw her brother approaching with his strange burden. She dropped the sheet she was holding and ran to meet them. "Cade, what happened?" Grace Emerson was a practical woman of 28 with her brother's same brown eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor born from years of nursing work. "Found her in a ravine about 3 miles out," Cade said, already dismounting carefully. "Someone beat her half to death. She needs help, Grace." "She needs help now." Grace took one look at the unconscious woman and her face hardened with determination. "Bring her inside. Put her in my room where the light is good. I will get my supplies." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Grace worked with calm efficiency, cleaning wounds, setting the broken arm, wrapping cracked ribs. She made Maeve drink willow bark tea for the pain whenever she was conscious enough to swallow. Cade hovered in the doorway, feeling useless but unwilling to leave entirely. "She has been beaten severely," Grace said without looking up from her work. "Multiple broken ribs, broken arm, severe bruising all over her body. Whoever did this was trying to kill her, Cade. This was not just a beating. This was attempted murder." "I know," Cade said grimly. "When she wakes up, we need to find out who did this." "If she wakes up," Grace corrected. "She has lost a lot of blood and I cannot tell if there is internal damage. The next day or so will be critical. One of us needs to sit with her at all times." Cade volunteered for the first watch without hesitation. He pulled a chair close to the bed where Maeve lay pale and still against the white sheets. Grace had washed the blood from her face and hair, and he could see now that she was young, probably not much older than 20. Even swollen and bruised, there was something striking about her features, a certain delicacy to the curve of her jaw and the arch of her brows. He sat with her through the afternoon and into the evening, changing the cool cloth on her forehead when the fever started, dripping water into her mouth whenever she stirred. Grace brought him dinner, which he ate mechanically without tasting. His mind kept circling back to the same question. Who could do this to another human being, let alone a woman? Maeve woke fully for the first time just after midnight. One moment Cade was half dozing in his chair, and the next her eyes were open and wild with fear. She tried to sit up, tried to fight against the blankets tangling her legs, and a cry of terror escaped her swollen lips. Hey, it is all right," Cade said quickly, moving to her side but careful not to touch her. "You are safe. You are at my family's ranch. Nobody is going to hurt you here." She stared at him with haunted eyes, her breathing rapid and shallow. He could see her trying to piece together her memories, trying to understand where she was and how she had gotten here. "My name is Cade Emerson," he continued in that same calm voice. "I found you in a ravine this morning. You were hurt real bad. My sister Grace, she has been taking care of you. Do you remember what happened?" Maeve opened her mouth to speak, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. "My brothers." Those two words carried a weight of pain that went beyond the physical. Cade felt anger kindle hot in his chest. "Your brothers did this to you," she nodded, and tears began sliding down her bruised cheeks. "They wanted me to marry Benjamin Walcott. I said no. I could not. He is a terrible man, cruel to his workers, and his first wife died under suspicious circumstances. They said I had no choice, that I was ruining their business arrangement. When I tried to leave, they dragged me outside. Marcus hit me first, then Daniel joined in. They kept hitting me until I could not stand anymore. Then they threw me in their wagon and drove me out to the ravine. Marcus said the coyotes would finish what they started." Her voice broke on the last words, and Cade could not stop himself from reaching out to gently take her uninjured hand. "I am so sorry. No one deserves that, especially not from family. But you are safe now, I swear it. They will not touch you again." "You do not understand," Maeve whispered. "They will come looking for me. When they realize I am not dead, they will come. And they have connections in town, friends who will help them. The sheriff plays cards with Marcus every Saturday night." "Let them come," Cade said, his voice hard. "They will have to go through me first, and I do not lose fights easily." Despite everything, Maeve felt a small flicker of hope. This stranger with kind eyes and gentle hands had saved her life. Maybe, just maybe, she had a chance to survive this after all. She was so tired, bone-deep exhausted in a way she had never experienced before. Her eyes started to drift closed again. "Rest," Cade said softly, giving her hand a small squeeze before releasing it. "You need to heal. Grace and I will keep watch. You are safe here." She wanted to believe him. As consciousness slipped away again, she realized that she did believe him. There was something solid and trustworthy about Cade Emerson, something that made her feel protected for the first time in years. The next week passed slowly. Maeve drifted between sleep and waking, her body fighting to heal from the extensive damage. The fever came and went, and during the worst of it, she thrashed and cried out, reliving the beating in her nightmares. Cade and Grace took turns sitting with her, but Cade found himself taking most of the shifts. He told himself it was because Grace needed rest, but the truth was that he hated being away from Maeve's bedside. Some part of him needed to see her breathing, to know she was still fighting. During her lucid moments, they talked. At first, it was just simple things. Maeve told him her full name, Maeve Catherine Zimmerman. She had been born in Ohio, but her family had moved to California when she was 10 after her mother died of scarlet fever. Her father had been stern but fair until a riding accident left him partially paralyzed 5 years ago. After that, he had become bitter and controlling, and when he died 2 years later, he had left everything to his sons with the stipulation that Maeve was to remain in their care until she married. "I worked as a seamstress in town," she said one afternoon when she was finally able to sit up without too much pain. "I was saving money to leave, to go to San Francisco and start over, but Marcus found my money hidden in my room. He and Daniel spent it all on gambling and drink. When Benjamin Walcott started showing interest in me, they saw an opportunity to settle some debts. He offered them a substantial payment for my hand in marriage." "That is not a marriage. That is selling you like property," Cade said, unable to keep the anger from his voice. "You had every right to refuse." My brothers did not see it that way. Maeve looked down at her bandaged arm. "They said I was ungrateful, that I owed them for keeping a roof over my head. When I said I would rather die than marry that man, Marcus said that could be arranged." Cade was quiet for a moment, processing this. "What do you want to do now? When you are healed, I mean. Do you still want to go to San Francisco?" Maeve had been thinking about this question for days. "I do not know. I have nothing, Cade, no money, no belongings. My brothers will have told everyone I ran away or worse. I cannot go back to town without risking them finding me." "You have time to decide," Cade assured her. "You can stay here as long as you need. Grace enjoys having another woman around, says I am terrible company." He tried for a light tone, and was rewarded with a small smile from Maeve. That smile did something to his heart, made it skip in a way that had nothing to do with exertion or fear. Over the past week, Cade had come to know this woman not just as a victim he had rescued, but as a person with dreams and fears and a quiet strength that amazed him. Despite everything she had endured, she never complained about the pain, never gave in to despair. She was determined to heal, to survive, and he found himself drawn to that resilience. Grace noticed, of course. Older sisters always notice these things. One evening when Maeve was sleeping, she cornered Cade in the kitchen. "You are falling for her," she said without preamble. Cade nearly dropped the coffee pot he was holding. "What? I am just helping someone in need." "Cade Emerson, I have known you your entire life, and I have never seen you look at a woman the way you look at her. You barely leave her side. You watch her like you are afraid she will disappear if you look away." He set the coffee pot down carefully. "Even if that was true, which I am not saying it is, she has been through hell. The last thing she needs is me complicating things with feelings she might not share." Grace's expression softened. "Just do not wait too long to tell her. Life is short, Cade. We both know that." She was right, and Cade knew it. Their parents had died within 6 months of each other just 3 years ago, his father from a heart attack and his mother from the grief that followed. Life in the West was unpredictable and often brutal. When you found something worth holding on to, you had to have the courage to reach for it. But first, Maeve needed to heal, and she needed to feel safe. The feeling of safety was tested 2 weeks after Cade found her. Maeve was finally able to walk around the house without too much pain, though her ribs still ached and her arm remained in a sling. She was helping Grace prepare dinner, enjoying the simple domestic task, when they heard horses approaching at speed. Cade had been mending a fence in the near pasture, but he came running at the sound. He burst through the front door, his face grim. 3 riders coming in hard. "Maeve, get upstairs and stay away from the windows." She went pale but did not argue, hurrying up the stairs as fast as her healing body would allow. Grace moved to the gun cabinet and pulled out their father's old rifle, checking that it was loaded with practiced efficiency. The riders pulled up in front of the house in a cloud of dust. Cade stepped out onto the porch, his hand resting on his revolver. He recognized two of the men immediately. They had the same sharp features as Maeve, the same dark hair. These had to be the brothers. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Cade kept his voice level and cold. The older of the two men, Marcus, dismounted. He was tall and broad-shouldered with a cruel twist to his mouth. "We are looking for our sister, Maeve Zimmerman. We heard you might have found a woman injured out near your property." "And where did you hear that?" Cade asked, though he had a pretty good idea. Grace had needed to go into town for medical supplies last week. Someone must have asked questions. "Folks talk," Daniel said from his horse. He was younger than Marcus but shared the same hard eyes. "So did you find her or not?" "I found a woman half dead from a beating," Cade said flatly. "Did not get a name before she died. Buried her out past the south pasture 2 days ago." The lie came easily because he could see the truth in these men's faces. They had done exactly what Maeve had described. They were monsters wearing human skin, and he would die before letting them near her again. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "That's so. Then you would not mind if we took a look around your property, just to be sure." "Actually, I would mind. This is private land and you are trespassing." "I have answered your question. Now I am going to ask you politely to leave." The third man, who had not yet spoken, moved his hand toward his gun. "Maybe we do not feel like leaving just yet." The click of Grace cocking the rifle was loud in the sudden silence. She had appeared in the doorway, the weapon aimed steadily at the men. "My brother asked you politely. I will not be so courteous. You have 5 seconds to get back on your horses and ride out of here before I start shooting." 1. Marcus held up his hands in a placating gesture. "No need for violence, miss. We are just concerned about our sister, too. If she is dead like your brother says, then there is no harm in us paying our respects at the grave," Daniel tried. 3. Cade drew his revolver, adding his aim to Grace's. "You boys better listen to my sister. She does not make threats she does not intend to keep. And neither do I. I found a woman who had been beaten so badly I could barely tell she was human. If you are the ones who did that to your own sister, then you are lucky I am letting you leave at all instead of shooting you where you stand." 4. Something in Cade's voice must have convinced them he meant it. Marcus remounted his horse, his face dark with anger. "If we find out you are lying, Cowboy, we will be back, and we will bring the law with us." "You do that," Cade said. "I am sure Sheriff Patterson would be real interested to hear about how a woman ended up beaten and left for dead in a ravine." Real interested indeed. The 3 men rode off, though Marcus looked back twice before they disappeared down the road. Cade did not lower his gun until they were completely out of sight. Only then did he allow himself to exhale. "That was close," Grace said, finally uncocking the rifle. "But you know they will be back, and next time they might bring more men." "I know." Cade holstered his revolver and headed inside. He took the stairs 2 at a time and found Maeve sitting on the floor of Grace's bedroom, her back pressed against the wall and her face white with fear. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "They are gone," he said softly, kneeling in front of her. "Maeve, they are gone. I told them you died. They will not come back." "Yes, they will," she whispered. "You do not know them like I do. Marcus will not let this go. He does not like being defied, and he needs that money from Walcott. He will find a way to get to me." Cade took her trembling hands in his. "Then we will be ready. But I meant what I said, Maeve. I will not let them take you. You have my word." She looked up at him with those haunted eyes, and something passed between them in that moment. It was more than gratitude, more than the bond between rescuer and rescued. It was the first fragile thread of something deeper, something that would grow into an unshakable love if given the chance. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You do not owe me anything." You could have just left me in that ravine, or you could have turned me over to them just now. Why are you protecting me?" Cade was quiet for a moment, trying to find the right words. "When I found you, you were holding on to life with everything you had. Even beaten and bleeding and left for dead, you were fighting. That takes a kind of courage I respect. And then I got to know you, and I realized you are kind and strong, and you deserve so much better than what life has given you. So I am protecting you because it is the right thing to do, but also because I cannot imagine doing anything else." Tears spilled down Maeve's cheeks, but for the first time they were not tears of pain or fear. "I do not know how to thank you. You do not have to thank me. Just get better. Keep fighting like you have been. That is all I ask." He helped her to her feet and guided her back to the bed, where she sat with visible exhaustion. The confrontation had drained what little energy she had built up. Grace appeared in the doorway with a cup of her willow bark tea. "Drink this," she ordered gently. "You need rest. We can worry about your brothers tomorrow." But tomorrow brought new complications. Cade rode into Ukiah early, wanting to get a sense of what people were saying and whether Marcus and Daniel had been spreading lies. What he discovered was worse than he had feared. Not only had the brothers told everyone that Maeve had run off with a drifter, stealing money from them in the process, but Benjamin Walcott had offered a substantial reward for her return. The whole town was buzzing with gossip. Cade stopped at the general store, where Mrs. Patterson, the sheriff's wife, was holding court with several other ladies. "Such a shame about the Zimmerman girl," she was saying as Cade browsed the shelves, listening. "Always seemed so proper and well-mannered. You never can tell with some people, can you? To think she would steal from her own brothers and run off like that. I heard she was seeing a gambler from Sacramento," another woman added. "Marcus told my husband she had been sneaking out at night for weeks." Cade approached the counter, keeping his expression neutral. "Excuse me, madam, but I could not help overhearing. When exactly did Miss Zimmerman supposedly run off?" Mrs. Patterson looked at him with interest. "About 2 weeks ago, I believe. Do you know something about it, Mr. Emerson?" "Only that I found a woman dead from a beating about 2 weeks ago," Cade said carefully. "Out near my property. Buried her myself. I wonder if anyone has checked to make sure Miss Zimmerman actually ran off and did not meet with foul play." The women exchanged shocked glances. "Dead? Are you certain?" "As certain as anyone can be. She was beaten something fierce before she died. I only saw her face for a moment, but it was not a pretty sight." He made his purchases and left, knowing the gossip would spread quickly. If he could plant doubt about the brothers' story, it might buy them time. He also stopped by the telegraph office and sent a wire to a friend in Sacramento, a federal marshal named Tom Crawford. If Marcus and Daniel tried to force the issue, Cade wanted someone with authority on his side. When he returned to the ranch, he found Maeve sitting on the porch with Grace, enjoying the afternoon sunshine. The bruises on her face had faded from black and purple to yellow and green, and the swelling had gone down enough that he could see her features clearly for the first time. She was beautiful, he realized, with delicate features and expressive eyes the color of storm clouds. But it was the smile she gave him when she saw him riding up that truly took his breath away. "You look like you are feeling better," he said, dismounting and tying Cricket to the porch rail. "I am. Grace says I am healing faster than she expected. The ribs still hurt, but I can move around without feeling like I am going to collapse." She paused. "Did you go into town? What did you hear?" Cade told her everything and watched her face fall as she processed the lies her brothers had spread. "They always do this," she said bitterly. "They twist things to make themselves look good and anyone who opposes them look bad. The whole town will believe I am some kind of thief and harlot now." "Not the whole town," Cade said. "I planted some doubts about their story, And I sent a wire to a federal marshal I know. If your brothers step out of line, we will have real law enforcement on our side, not just a small town sheriff in their pocket." Maeve looked at him with wonder. "You thought of everything." "I am trying to." He sat down on the porch steps, suddenly feeling the weight of the day. "I will not lie to you, Maeve. This situation is complicated. Your brothers have influence in town, and they are clearly willing to lie and maybe worse to get what they want. But I meant what I said. They will not take you. Whatever happens, you have a home here for as long as you need it." Grace stood up, stretching. "I am going to start dinner. Maeve, do you feel up to helping me shell peas?" "Of course." Maeve rose carefully and followed Grace inside, but not before giving Cade a look that made his heart race. Over the following weeks, a comfortable routine developed. Maeve grew stronger each day, her body healing even as her spirit recovered from the trauma. She threw herself into helping around the ranch, cooking and mending, and even helping Grace tend the small vegetable garden behind the house. Cade caught himself watching her more and more, noticing the way she hummed while she worked, the way she laughed at his jokes even when they were not that funny, the way she always seemed to know when he had something on his mind. They talked for hours in the evenings after dinner, sitting on the porch and watching the sun set over the California hills. She told him about her childhood, about her mother who had been kind and loving, about her dreams of owning her own dress shop someday. He told her about growing up on the ranch, about learning to break horses from his father, about the year he had spent working as a ranch hand in Montana before coming home. "Why did you come back?" Maeve asked one night. "If you were doing well in Montana." "My father had his heart attack and my mother needed help with the ranch. Family comes first always." He paused. "Though I have to admit Montana was lonely. Something was missing even when I was doing work I enjoyed. And now," she looked at him with those storm-gray eyes. "Do you still feel like something is missing?" Cade held her gaze. "No, not anymore." The air between them suddenly felt charged with possibility. Maeve's breath caught, and for a moment Cade thought she might close the distance between them on the porch swing. But then Grace called from inside about something boiling over, and the moment passed. But there would be other moments. Every day brought them closer, built the foundation of something real and lasting. Cade found himself falling deeper in love with her with each passing day. It was not just her beauty, though she was lovely. It was her strength, her resilience, her determination to rebuild her life from the ashes. It was the way she cared for his sister, the way she treated the ranch animals with gentleness, the way she could find joy in simple things after everything she had endured. 6 weeks after he found her, Cade finally worked up the courage to speak his heart. He had spent the day helping a neighbor with a difficult horse, and when he returned home as the sun was setting, he found Maeve waiting on the porch. She had made a special dinner, Grace having conveniently decided to visit a friend in town for the evening. "I wanted to thank you," Maeve said over the meal, "for everything you have done for me. I would be dead if not for you, Cade. You gave me my life back." "You do not have to keep thanking me," he said. "I am just glad I found you when I did. It is more than that, though." She set down her fork, seeming to gather her courage. "You made me believe that good men exist in this world. After my father died and my brothers showed their true colors, I thought all men were either cruel or weak, but you are neither. You are kind and strong and honorable, and I do not know what I did to deserve being found by you, but I am grateful every single day." Cade reached across the table and took her hand. "Maeve, I need to tell you something. These past weeks, getting to know you, watching you heal and grow stronger, it has changed something in me. I think about you constantly. When I am working, I am thinking about what I want to tell you later. When I wake up, the first thing I want is to see your smile. I know your life has been hard, and I know you have been hurt in ways I cannot fully understand, but I need you to know that I have fallen in love with you, completely and irrevocably in love with you." Tears gathered in Maeve's eyes, but she was smiling. "I love you too. I think I started falling for you that first night when you sat by my bed and promised I would be safe. No one has ever protected me the way you have. No one has ever made me feel the way you do, like I am worth something, like I matter. You do matter. You matter to me more than anything." He stood and moved around the table, and she rose to meet him. When he kissed her, it was gentle and sweet, mindful of her still healing injuries, but full of all the emotion they had been building toward for weeks. She wrapped her good arm around his neck and kissed him back with equal tenderness and passion. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Cade rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right. I want to court you properly, and when enough time has passed, I want to marry you. I want to give you the life you deserve, full of love and safety and happiness. Will you let me do that?" "Yes," Maeve whispered. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They spent the rest of the evening talking about the future, making plans and dreaming together. Cade wanted to expand the ranch, maybe add cattle to their horse breeding operation. Maeve still dreamed of her dress shop, and Cade promised to help her make that dream a reality once things settled down. They would build a life together, one filled with love and laughter, and all the things both of them had been denied for too long. But their happiness was threatened one more time. A week after their confession of love, Marcus and Daniel returned, and this time they brought Benjamin Walcott and 4 hired guns with them. Cade was in the barn when he heard the horses, and he immediately knew this was trouble. He grabbed his rifle and ran for the house, shouting for Maeve and Grace to get inside and bar the door. The 7 men surrounded the house, and Walcott called out in a booming voice, "Emerson, we know you have been hiding Maeve Zimmerman. Send her out now, and we can resolve this peacefully." Cade positioned himself at a window, his rifle trained on the men below. "The woman I found died of her injuries. I told you that before, Marcus. You got no business here." "Do not play games," Marcus snarled. "We talked to a doctor in town who sold medicine to your sister. Described the injuries perfectly and said the woman was very much alive. Now send our sister out here before this gets ugly." "The only thing ugly here is what you did to her," Cade shot back. "Beating your own sister and leaving her to die. What kind of men do that?" "The kind who know their place and expect their women to know theirs," Walcott said. "Maeve belongs to me. Her brothers promised her hand, and I paid good money for it. She is coming with us one way or another." From upstairs, Maeve appeared at a window with a rifle of her own. Her voice was clear and strong when she spoke. "I belong to no one, Benjamin Walcott. I did not agree to marry you, and I never will. You can take your money and go straight to hell." Walcott's face turned red with rage. "You little whore! I will drag you out of there by your hair if I have to. Boys, light some torches. If they will not send her out, we will burn them out." That was when the gunshot rang out, kicking up dirt inches from Walcott's horse. Everyone froze and turned to see a man on horseback approaching from the road. He wore a federal marshal's badge, and his rifle was still raised. "I do not think you will be burning anything," Marshal Tom Crawford said calmly. He was a lean man in his 40s with steel gray hair and the kind of weathered face that had seen too much violence. "In fact, I think you gentlemen are going to turn around and ride back to town real peaceful-like, unless you want to explain to a judge why you were threatening to commit arson and kidnapping." "This is none of your concern, Marshal," Marcus said, though he looked nervous now. "This is a family matter. Attempted murder is not a family matter, son. It is a federal crime." Crawford rode closer, his eyes hard. Cade wired me about a woman who was beaten near to death by her own brothers and left in a ravine. I rode out to take a look at the scene myself. Found some real interesting things. Blood on the rocks, signs of a struggle, and most interesting of all these. He pulled a pocket watch and a distinctive pocket knife from his saddlebag. Found them near the ravine. The watch has initials engraved on it. MZ. That would be Marcus Zimmerman, would it not? And the knife, well, someone in town told me Daniel Zimmerman is always playing with a bone-handled knife just like this one. Daniel went pale. That does not prove anything. Maybe not on its own. But when combined with testimony from the victim about how her brothers beat her and left her for dead, and the physical evidence, and the fact that you boys just showed up here with armed men threatening violence, well, I think a jury would find it real compelling. Crawford's voice was cold as winter. So here is what is going to happen. You are all going to put your hands up nice and slow. Then you are going to ride into town where I am going to place you under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, and assault with intent to kill. Try to run, and I will shoot you. Try to fight, and I will shoot you. Are we clear? The men exchanged glances, clearly weighing their options. But Crawford was a federal marshal with a reputation for being quick on the draw and even quicker with his judgment. Slowly, reluctantly, they all raised their hands. Cade and Maeve emerged from the house, followed by Grace. Maeve walked right up to Marcus, her chin high despite the fear he could see in her eyes. You tried to kill me. Your own sister. I hope you rot in prison for what you did. Marcus's face twisted with rage, but with Crawford's rifle on him, he could do nothing. You always were ungrateful. Everything we did was for your own good. Beating me was for my own good. Leaving me to die was for my own good. Maeve's voice shook with emotion. You are a monster, Marcus. You and Daniel both. Our mother would be ashamed of what you have become. Crawford and two deputies who had appeared from the road began binding the men's hands. As they led them away, Walcott turned back one last time. This is not over, Maeve. I paid for you, and I will get what I paid for. Actually, it is over, Crawford said. I will be recommending that you be charged as an accessory to attempted murder, Mr. Walcott, seeing as you were here with armed men making threats. Might want to save your words for your lawyer. As the prisoners were led away, Maeve collapsed against Cade, all the strength she had been holding on to suddenly draining away. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close as she shook with reaction. It is over, he murmured into her hair. It is really over now. They cannot hurt you anymore. Crawford rode back to them after getting the prisoners secured. I will need Miss Zimmerman to come into town tomorrow to give a full statement. After that, there will be a trial, probably in about 6 weeks. You will need to testify, madam. Can you do that? Maeve nodded, still clinging to Cade. Yes, I want to see them answer for what they did. Good woman. Crawford tipped his hat to them. Cade, it was good to hear from you again, even under these circumstances. You folks take care now, and Miss Zimmerman, you picked a good man to trust. Cade Emerson is one of the most honest men I know. After Crawford left with his prisoners, the three of them stood in the yard, almost unable to believe it was truly over. Grace spoke first. I think I need a very large glass of whiskey, or maybe 2. That broke the tension, and they all laughed, the sound edged with relief and exhaustion. They went inside, and true to her word, Grace poured them all whiskey. They sat at the kitchen table, processing everything that had happened. What happens now? Maeve asked. With the trial, I mean. Will I have to go back to my brother's house? Absolutely not, Cade said firmly. You will stay here. Marshal Crawford is a friend and he understands the situation. Besides, technically that house should be partially yours. Your father's will left everything to his sons, but you could contest that, especially given what they did to you. I do not want anything from them, Maeve said. Not the house, not any money. I just want them to face justice for what they did. After that, I want to never think about them again. The trial took place 6 weeks later in Sacramento. Moved there because of concerns about getting a fair jury in Ukiah given the Zimmerman brothers' connections. Maeve testified about the beating, about her brother's cruelty, about being left to die. The physical evidence, combined with her testimony and Cade's account of finding her, was overwhelming. Marcus and Daniel Zimmerman were each sentenced to 15 years in prison. Benjamin Walcott, charged as an accessory, received 5 years. When the verdicts were read, Maeve felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she had been carrying her entire life. She was finally, truly free. Cade and Maeve were married 1 month after the trial, in a small ceremony at the ranch with Grace and Marshall Crawford as witnesses. Maeve wore a dress she had sewn herself, simple but beautiful in white linen with delicate embroidery at the collar. Cade had never seen anything more lovely than the sight of her walking toward him with wildflowers in her hair and love shining in her eyes. They spoke their vows as the sun set over the California hills, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives. When Cade kissed his bride, he tasted salt from her happy tears and felt his own eyes growing damp. This woman had come into his life broken and bleeding, and together they had built something beautiful from that tragedy. The years that followed were full of joy and hard work and deep, abiding love. True to his word, Cade helped Maeve open her dress shop in Ukiah 2 years after their marriage. She had a gift for design and sewing, and soon she had more customers than she could handle. The shop gave her independence and purpose, and Cade loved seeing her so happy and fulfilled. Their first child, a son they named Samuel after Cade's father, was born in the spring of 1881. Maeve held him in her arms and wept with joy, marveling that something so perfect could exist in the world. Cade was a devoted father, spending hours with his son even after long days working the ranch. A daughter came 2 years later, whom they named Lily Grace. She had her mother's gray eyes and her father's sunny disposition. Maeve sometimes looked at her children and could hardly believe this was her life. She had gone from being beaten and left to die to having a husband who adored her and children who filled her days with laughter. Grace remained with them, becoming the best aunt anyone could ask for. She never married, claiming she was too set in her ways, but she doted on her niece and nephew and helped Maeve run the dress shop when business was particularly busy. The ranch prospered under Cade's management. He added cattle to their operation and developed a reputation for breeding excellent horses. He and Maeve built a new, larger house with room for their growing family, though they kept the original house for Grace. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Cade took Maeve back to the spot where he had found her. The ravine looked different now, less menacing in the golden afternoon light. Maeve stood at the edge, looking down at the rocks below. "I was so scared," she said quietly. "I really thought I was going to die there alone. I remember praying for someone to find me, but not really believing anyone would." Cade put his arm around her waist, pulling her close. "I am so grateful I was the one who found you. That I got to be the one to help you heal, to fall in love with you, to build this life with you." She turned in his arms and kissed him. "You saved me in every way a person can be saved. You gave me back my life, my hope, my belief that love exists. I cannot imagine my life without you, Cade Emerson. And you will never have to." He held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling her heart beat against his chest. "We have got many more years ahead of us, Mrs. Emerson. Many more sunsets to watch, children to raise, dreams to build together." They stood there for a long moment, holding each other as the wind whispered through the California hills. The past was behind them, full of pain and trauma, but they had survived it. They had found each other in the darkest moment, and from that darkness had built a life full of light and love. When they finally turned to leave, Maeve looked back one last time at the ravine. It no longer held any power over her. It was just a place where something terrible had happened, but also where something wonderful had begun. The place where a cowboy with kind eyes had found a bleeding woman and decided to save her life, never knowing he would end up giving her his heart. Their third child, another son named Thomas after Marshall Crawford, was born when Maeve was 30. Their family was complete, their home filled with laughter and love. Samuel grew up to be a rancher like his father, taking over more and more of the daily operations as Cade grew older. Lily followed in her mother's footsteps, learning the art of dressmaking and eventually taking over the shop when Maeve decided to focus more on her family and home. Thomas became a lawyer, driven by his parents' stories about justice and standing up for those who could not stand up for themselves. He made them incredibly proud when he won his first case defending a woman whose husband had been abusive. As the years passed and their children grew and had children of their own, Cade and Maeve never lost the spark that had brought them together. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset. They still talked for hours about everything and nothing. The love between them only deepened with time, growing from that first fierce protectiveness and passionate attraction into something solid and unshakable. On their 40th wedding anniversary, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, Maeve stood to make a toast. At 61, she was still beautiful, her hair now silver and her face lined with the marks of a life well lived. 40 years ago, she said, her voice still strong and clear, I was dying in a ravine, beaten by people who should have loved and protected me. I had given up hope that anyone good existed in the world. Then Cade found me. He saved my life, but more than that, he gave me a reason to want to live. He showed me what real love looks like, what a true partnership means. Every day with him has been a gift I never expected to receive. So here is to 40 more years, my love, though I know we may not have that many. Whatever time we have left, I want to spend every moment of it with you. Cade stood and kissed her to the applause of their family. I found you, he said, but you saved me too. You made my life complete in ways I did not know were possible. I love you, Maeve Emerson, today and always. They lived another blessed 15 years together, years filled with great-grandchildren and quiet contentment. When Cade passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 80, Maeve held his hand and whispered her love one last time. She followed him 6 months later, unable to imagine a world without him in it. Their children buried them side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a simple marker that read, Cade and Maeve Emerson. They found each other in the darkness and built a life of light. The ranch stayed in the family for generations, and the story of how it all began became family legend. How a cowboy had found a woman bleeding in a ravine and saved her life. How that act of kindness had blossomed into a love that lasted a lifetime and created a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, their descendants would sit on the old porch and watch the sunset over the California hills, and they would think about that moment when everything changed. When a desperate woman held onto life with everything she had, and when a good man decided to help a stranger in need. They would think about how the darkest moments can sometimes lead to the most beautiful beginnings, and how true love, once found, never really ends. The dress shop that Maeve had started continued for 3 generations, passed from Lily to her daughter and then to her granddaughter. Each woman who ran it kept Maeve's original design sketches framed on the wall, a reminder of the woman who had survived the unthinkable and gone on to build something lasting and beautiful. The ranch itself became known throughout Northern California for its fine horses and honest dealings, a reputation Cade had built and his descendants maintained. Samuel's great-great-grandson still ran cattle and bred horses on the land in the modern age, walking the same hills his ancestor had ridden over, living in a house built on the foundation of love and courage. But more than the physical legacy of shop and ranch, Cade and Maeve left behind something more precious. They had shown their family what real love looked like, love that protected and nurtured, love that saw someone at their worst and chose to help them become their best. They had proven that where you started did not matter as much as where you chose to go, and who you chose to walk beside on that journey. Their story was one of darkness overcome by light, of cruelty answered with kindness, of a life nearly ended becoming a life fully lived. It was a story their family would tell for generations, keeping alive the memory of a cowboy with kind eyes who found a woman bleeding in a ravine and chose to save her, never knowing that in doing so, he would find the great love of his life and create a legacy that would endure forever.